Welcome everybody to this extraordinary meeting of Council on Wednesday the 28th of June. If I could remind everyone to turn their mobile phones to silent, please. Acknowledgement of country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledge the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respects to elders, both past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here or watching today. Statement of ethical obligations. As Administrator, I will undertake the duties of the Office of Administrator in the best interest of the people of the Wingecarribee Shire Council area and to act faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment. I am committed to the declarations of interest in relation to items listed for consideration on the agenda or which are considered at this meeting in accordance with the Code of Conduct and Code of Meeting Practice. Obviously there are no apologies. I just note for the record that Carmel Foster is the Acting General Manager in the absence of Lisa Miss Campbell. Acting General Manager, declarations of interest.
There are no declarations of interest, Mr. May.
Thank you. So we move on to the published business paper. Item 6.1 is the first item. Woolworths Moss Vale. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. Before I introduce the report, I'd just like to table two pieces of correspondence that we have received from Woolworths on this matter and yet table them at the meeting as you have requested.
Thank you. I had been contacted by Woolworths on two occasions prior to this being printed. So for the record, I haven't met with them and I have no intention of meeting with them. That's not my job. And I just did that for openness and transparency.
Thank you, Mr. May. So our Executive Manager Strategic Outcomes, Mr. Park, will introduce the report.
Thank you. So, Mr. May, this report seeks to inform Council and the community of a proposed neighbourhood shopping centre development at 233 Argyle Street in Moss Vale, and to advise Council of an offer to enter into a voluntary planning agreement that would facilitate a new road access to the proposed development over what is Council-owned land. So, Mr. May, the land subject to the report is owned by Fabcot, and who proposed to lodge a development application for a supermarket and specialty retail shops and a commercial premises over the land. And as part of that proposal, Fabcot proposes to gain access over the adjoining council-owned land at 231 Argyle Street. And this would include a new signalised intersection across the adjoining council land, a signalised intersection at Argyle Street and Valletta Streets, and the construction of a new road over council-owned land. So, Mr. May, in that regard, Fabcot have made an offer to enter into a voluntary planning agreement to pay a monetary contribution to facilitate that access over the council-owned land. And the report ultimately recommends that the General Manager be authorised to enter into negotiations in relation to Fabcot's offer to enter into a planning agreement. And following those negotiations, the matter would be reported back to Council to make a decision on that offer. In addition to the offer to enter into a planning agreement, as the proposed development application would apply partially to council-owned land, Fabcot has also requested landowners' consent from council for the purpose of lodging a development application. So it's important to note that any landowner's consent would apply only to the lodgement of a development application and would in no way provide any consent or permission for Fabcot to undertake any physical works over council land or provide any support or otherwise for the development application, which would be subject to our standard development assessment processes. So it's therefore recommended that the council provide landowners' consent for the purpose of lodging a development application over the council-owned land. However, just for the sake of clarity or transparency, it's also specifically recommended in the report that council will not provide approval or permission to carry out works on the council-owned land unless and until a VPA has been finalised and registered on the title of the land.
For the record also, I would advise that at a meeting with Mr. Park and Miss Campbell, we met with the president of Grow Wingecarribee. Sorry?
Grow Southern Highlands.
Grow Southern Highlands, where this matter was raised, but not in any detail. They were just wanting to know really where it was up to, and they were advised that a report along this lines would be coming. I've got a few questions with this because this is going to end up a big call if it's approved or not approved or whatever. I understand the reasoning behind the land staying in public ownership, and I presume that as part of, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, I'm just trying to get my head around it, because I won't be dealing with the development application. That'll either be a matter for the local planning or but the voluntary planning agreement is important in my view, and I don't know whether the director or yourself you can answer my questions. I understand that under any consent, if it was issued, they'd be responsible for building the road, and obviously there need to be traffic lights, I would think, and they'd be responsible for all those costs.
Thank you, Mr. May. So the proposal, I mean, it's yet to come before council formally, but the proposal would include the construction of the road and a signalised intersection at Argyle and Valletta Streets as part of the development work, so paid for and funded by the developer as part of their access to their site, which is fairly common practice. And so the planning agreement is separate to the construction of the works, well, sorry, the offer to enter into a planning agreement is separate to the actual physical construction of the road and the intersection required to access the development.
So they would construct the road and the lights, but the council would in effect have care, control and management and maintenance in perpetuity.
Again, without yet being at a point where we've got the details of a planning agreement, my understanding of how the process would work is that the land once constructed would ultimately be dedicated as a road reserve, so it would form a road reserve, and like any other council road, we sort of are essentially the owner of the road and therefore responsible for the ongoing maintenance of that road.
But there'd only be one beneficiary. Where else would the road go?
Was that a question? Or was look, yeah, it is essentially would operate as an access to a development.
That part of Argyle Street, excluding the Central Hotel, is not the prettiest. You've got the access into the railway. You've got that horrible substation. You've got where the road would go, and then KFC. Look, my issue is that I understand that there would be no undertaking given that the council will proceed. But if the council gives approval for them to submit an application, and that application turns its back on Argyle Street and is just for the benefit of that development, where does that leave the council with the community?
Look, it's hard to say where it leaves us with the community. I guess the point I'll make is that all that the report seeks to do is initially authorise the General Manager to enter into negotiations on the planning agreement, which would facilitate the access over the public land, but also to provide landowners consent to lodge the development application. It doesn't in any way influence council's assessment of that application. So council will undertake as per any development application, undertake a detailed assessment which will consider things like its impact on Argyle Street, its visual appearance, all of those things are sort of considered as part of that standard assessment process, and granting of landowners consent to provide access over the land doesn't in any way influence that assessment process. They're two very separate matters. Yeah.
So, in effect, the parcel that Woolworths have purchased is landlocked? Or does it have access to another street?
It does have access to another street. The name escapes me. It's through a residential area to the north of the site. I can't remember the name, off Sutter Road. I can't remember the name of the specific street. It is outlined in the body of the report, but it does have access to a low-density residential area to the north of the subject land.
And any DA that came in would have to be supported by traffic studies and the like?
Definitely, and my understanding is there's been a pre-lodgement meeting in relation to the development application, which would have advised the sort of the body of work that needed to come in support of that. And given sort of its location on Argyle Street, which is a fairly tricky and congested network, traffic is going to be one of a number of really critical considerations that have to be looked at as part of that assessment. And again, I'm not sort of exactly sure of the advice that was provided as part of that pre-lodgement meeting, but I could almost guarantee that it included you're going to have a really good look at traffic.
Look, I think I'm going to defer this because just to the next meeting to get some more information, because it's my understanding in briefings I had very, very early on that the Central Hotel site had access problems onto Argyle Street with the roads and RMS. So what's the difference between that site and further up the road when, you know, the council is trying to get grants from the state government for $200 million to build the Moss Vale bypass, which will have a reduction of 30%, as from recollection, of traffic on Argyle Street. You know, it worries me that you and I understand the process, and the council is being very careful in saying you can submit your application, but you can't prejudge the application. That will stand by itself. But I just want to make sure the community well and truly understands that this is only part of the process. And I think for the sake, 2 weeks will it be?
Yes, Mr. May. The next ordinary council meeting is on the third Wednesday of next month.
Look, I know the applicant may not be overly happy, but you know, I'm here for the community. A Woolworths in Moss Vale is a marketplace decision. That's not a matter for the council at the end of the day. But I think for the sake of a couple of weeks, just so that I have a better understanding and some of what I've raised can be addressed. You know, if this development, and I have no idea what it would like, if it has a car park in the front of it, you've got all those used car sale yards further up the road, you've got the service station, the pizza place, KFC. I would just like to give it a bit more thought. So I will move that the report on the Woolworths Moss Vale offer to enter into a voluntary planning agreement be deferred. Deferred to the July meeting. You know, I don't want to hold it up because you know, it's an application that's probably important to the community, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm satisfied, and I think I can ask a lot of these questions because I won't be dealing with this determination. Or involved in the voluntary planning agreement because they're operational matters. If you can take ordinary out, but you can do that just in a second. I declare that carried. The next item is the budget papers, resourcing strategy delivery plan, the operational plan. General Manager, where do you start with this one?
Yes, they're very complex documents, Mr. May. We'll have Ms. Daniel Lidgard, Manager of Governance and Corporate Performance, introducing part of the document, and Mr. Carl Conrad, who is our Chief Financial Officer, also introducing the financial component and the fees and charges.
Thank you, Acting General Manager. At its meeting on the 10th of May, Council resolved to place its draft resourcing strategy, delivery program and operational plan, including budget, revenue policy and fees and charges, on public exhibition for a period of 28 days. The public exhibition period provided an opportunity for the community to provide input into the draft documents, and the exhibition was held from the 12th of May through to the 9th of June. A project page was set up on Your Say Wingecarribee, and residents were provided an opportunity to complete an online form or make a submission by way of email or letter. Public notice of the exhibition period was via notification to all registered members of Your Say Wingecarribee, community contacts including village associations and chambers, Council's community reference panel members and 355 committees. An e-newsletter was also distributed to registered subscribers. There were social media posts and a media release. 4 community drop-in sessions were held in the Shire. These were at Bundanoon, Robertson, Hilltop and the Civic Centre in Moss Vale, with a total of 25 community members attending the drop-in sessions. 5 consultation sessions were also held during the public exhibition regarding the fees and charges for 355 committees and regular hires of Council's hall and community centres. Council received 41 submissions from community members and organisations during the public exhibition period. 3 of these submissions were received after the public exhibition closed, however, were considered and responded to by staff. The submissions addressed a range of matters, and a staff response has been provided to each of the submissions provided in attachment 1 to this report. Key themes arising from the submissions included a request for funding for the renewal and refurbishment of Mittagong Playhouse, objection to increase in fees and charges for halls and planning and development assessment, as well as general feedback. All submissions received during the public exhibition have been reviewed and given consideration. Following today's council meeting, all residents who have made a submission will receive a letter outlining the outcome from the council meeting, along with attachment 1 to this report, which provides all submissions made and officers' responses. Also, during the public exhibition period, an internal review was undertaken of the draft documents. Amendments have been proposed in response to external factors arising from the public exhibition period, and also confirming Council's capacity to deliver on the draft documents. These changes are outlined in tables 1 through to 3. I'll now hand over to the CFO to speak to the budget.
Thank you, Ms. Lidgard. During the public exhibition period, Council presented comparisons to the proposed fees and charges relating to Yorba Shire Council, Shellharbour City Council and Wollondilly Shire Council. The results showed that in general the proposed fees and charges were comparable to these councils, even though in many instances a like-for-like comparison was near impossible, as councils vary in the way they structure their fees and charges. Some councils may use a single fee, while others use a series of fees to achieve a similar outcome. Council needs to be financially sustainable into the future, and the long-term financial plan is the document that Council relies on to be fiscally prudent and responsible in applying increases to the fees and charges. The fees and charges comparison document will continue to be available on the Your Say Wingecarribee webpage. As a response to submissions received and further internal review, changes were made to the draft fees and charges as publicly exhibited. This includes some wording changes and additions for clarification, as well as aligning the unit of measures with the fee description detail. Details of the significant changes are listed within the Council report. No changes were made to the 2023-24 operating budget, with total operating expenditure amounting to $141 million, some $40 million higher than the 22-23 expenditure of $126 million. 11.9 million of this increase is attributed to the increase in depreciation resulting from the asset revaluations performed during the 2021 and 22 financial year. To recap on some of the budget assumptions just at a high level, the service levels are business as usual. The IPART rates peg of 4.1% includes a 0.4 factor growth factor, which is in contrast with the All Sydney CPI of March 2023 of 7.3%. Operating expenditure was increased by CPI, which is, 3%, unless justified by operational need or by contract or prescribed expenses. The forecast working capital greater than 5 million as at 30 June 2023, which will be reviewed as part of the 24-25 budget process. Changes and budget impacts have not been included in the budget for adoption. However, Council officers proposed the following changes to be incorporated in the 23-24 budget during the first quarterly budget review for September 2023. Budget savings from the cessation of Wingecarry's family daycare service, as recommended at last week's Council meeting, will be recognised as they are realised as a quarterly budget adjustment and released to general revenue. Grant opportunities will be proactively sought to progress the Mittagong Memorial Hall project. The related capital budget and related funding requirements will be included when grant funding has been secured. The $270,000 of salaries and wages efficiency as resolved at the May 2023 Extraordinary Council meeting will be recognised as the efficiencies are realised, with financial implications recognised at quarterly budget adjustments to progress the Emergency Operations Centre. There has been no net change to the total capital works program, totaling 83.9 million. The review of the detailed 4-year capital works program has resulted with some minor changes to the asset classifications of some projects. Further, the content to the open space and recreational asset project grouping was incorrectly presented, and the correct amounts have been displayed in the Council report. A condition assessment of Council's roads and footpaths is currently being conducted, and once this information is received and reviewed, it will be used to develop the details of the 23-24 Road and Footpath Renewal Programme. The detailed Road and Footpath Renewal Programme will be published on Council's website by the end of September 2023. The IPART rate peg applicable to Wingecarry for 23-24 is 4.1%, which is in stark contrast to the inflation figures of 7.3% mentioned earlier. In its simplest form, the rate peg means that Council's overall increase in land rates revenue is limited to 4.1%. The Valuer-General conducts land revaluations every 3 years, and the 23-24 land rates will be based on the most recent valuation provided by the Valuer-General. Council does not have discretion on which land values to use. It is important to remember that while there have been significant increases in land values, Council's increase in total land rates revenue is still limited to the IPART rates peg of 4.1%. This means that the distribution of this 4.1% land rates increase will be done relative to the average land value increase in each rating category. In context, while somewhat of a complex calculation in simplified terms, if a property value has increased by the average increase in the land valuation for that category, the land rates increase will be limited and be the rates peg of 4.1%. Where valuation increases by more than the average increase in valuation, the rates will increase by proportion more of the rates peg. Where the valuation of property increases by less than the average increase in land values for that rating category, the land rates for this property will either stay the same or possibly decrease. A revised set of guidelines has been introduced to manage Council's rates, water and sewage access subsidy scheme as part of this year's operational plan. This aligns the scheme with the revised grant donation sponsorship policy and ensures that these subsidies are made available more equitably across the ratepayer base. The new guidelines provide consistency as to how the budgeted $60,000 will be allocated across not-for-profit organisations, registered charities and religious organisations. Amongst other factors, the guidelines require service to be available to and of benefit to the residents without exclusion. As a final point on the budget, it is worth noting that Council is proposing to borrow $4 million this financial year to fund the Civic Centre back office refurbishment. Council would like to thank everyone who has taken the time to make a submission on the documents presented for adoption today. Every submission received will be provided with a response in writing along with all written submissions attached. Given the current economic climate, Council is operating in, we will continue to monitor and review the financial position to ensure Council remains financially sustainable. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. Is anybody else?
No, Mr May.
Can I just confirm that the decision taken when the budget was put on exhibition, that there will be down to level 4, will apply effective from the quarterly financial review at the end of December?
Correct. That's Q2. Correct.
Thank you. Look, I just think it's very important that residents can see line item to direct responsibility area, and I think it's absolutely essential for the next budget that we do that, so that when the council is elected 3 months after the budget, they will be able to see exactly where the money is being spent, and I think that's extremely important. Not all councils do it, I agree with that, but when you're trying to rebuild confidence and trust in the council, I think it's extremely important. And also, I think it will assist with the candidate process we're pulling together at the moment to better understand the operation of the council. Ms Slattery made a submission. I can deal with Mr Street's one, but I can't deal, but I want to know more about Ms Slattery's one. Who can provide advice on this?
Through you, Mr. May, I can probably comment on the question of the capital works projects as identified in the walking track strategy. They're currently unfunded, so even though that may not be as we would like to see it, that is like the reality that the budget brings with it.
What about maintenance money?
There's limited maintenance money available.
So there's no line item for maintenance?
No, not for walking tracks just as such.
This is the very point as you know, I've been harping about this for a long time now. So the short answer is there's nothing, unless there's a reallocation. Look, I can remember, and look, there's only one of me and so much happens, but there was an allocation for signage on walking tracks, which was reallocated to assist in the funding of another probably legacy matter that we were dealing with. I just wonder if anyone has a recollection of that.
I'll need to take that on notice.
Look, I might build into the recommendation. That way, there will be a report will come back to council, and we potentially can reallocate. Because I know the Boxall track, the police actually spoke with me about it, and the fact that at the Mittagong Centre, they were suggesting people they go on that walk, but they didn't tell them to stop before they went down the hill because you won't get back up again, kind of thing. And people were getting lost down by Natai Creek, I think, is it? And it's a great walk. I've done it a few times myself, but haven't been there for a while. But I'll draft something up in a second for that, unless someone can help me along the way. I've got a few changes to make with matters that I want to address in response to the public submissions. In response to submission 11, I certainly don't agree that there'll be temporary SULA bins placed in the main street of Bowral. I think if we're waiting for the plan, the Bowral plan, I think we should be just doing an extra empty on Saturdays, Sundays and public holidays The current bins there are just not fit for purpose. You have 3 coffees and the bins are full. So I'm going to amend that. And also, Mr. Lagarde said that people who made submissions will get a copy of the report. I don't think that's good enough. I think if a resident takes the time to make a submission to this, the non-delegated signature of the General Manager should be applied to any response, and it should just deal with the matters that the resident raises. So there's that. In relation to, I think it's attachment 2, or it might be attachment 3, in relation to the flow for development control plans, which I asked for, I think it's important that report also link to the report I asked for at the last meeting following the Treadwell report, which has gone on public exhibition. The community, I think, are better understanding the council's strategic planning, but it's not all written down in one document. And I think it needs to be put into one document, particularly the LEP and the contribution plans for the new housing areas. There needs to be a timeline. Now, Treadwell has put us back, I'd say, 6 to 9 months, and we've got to try and catch some of that up, because it's absolutely essential that if the council, when they come back, are going to make informed decisions, they need informed information. And so I'll be making a change to that one. In relation to the comparisons of fees and charges, I asked that there be more work done on that, where the fees were increased by greater than 7%. And I thank you for that. A lot of work gone into that. And I understand what you're saying. Some councils have different systems for what they do, but from my involvement in local government and understanding the different methods of doing things, I think that's a very good response, and I'm happy. In relation to the contested fees, a resident can go to the marketplace and get that work done. And I think, I call, mum and dad shouldn't be paying through their rates for what developers should be paying in the marketplace when they put applications in. What has been happening is, developers and mums and dads put an application into the council, and our fees are far too low. We then put them out to the market to get them assessed out in the market, and the council has to pay a lot more, and that's what this is all about. People, in my view, should be encouraged to use private certifiers based on all the policies we have. That way we'll get through a lot more work here. I would like consideration given to installing GPS technology in all council vehicles. I'd like the General Manager to report to all meetings of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee on active legal action involving council, and details to be supplied at the meetings be developed in consultation with the chair of the committee. When I first came here, every meeting they had a list of legal action, and it just started another bun fight at the council. So I stopped that, but I was horrified when I saw how much money's been spent on Frensham, and it's for you or for me? Oh, thank you. So that I disagree with you on the 270,000 efficiency dividend. I'm sorry. I'm not happy with it being reported quarterly. I want it taken out now, and you can cut your cloth for how much money you have. I know there are challenges associated with the salary structure. There's many people in this organisation don't get paid relative to the market, but I think you'd be pretty sure there are some who get paid over the market. So but that's a work in progress, a matter for the General Manager. But I'm taking the $270,000 out, and I'm going to allocate the $270,000 to an emergency operations centre to be constructed at the council chambers. Windsor Carriby does still not have an emergency operations centre, and quite frankly, it's just not good enough. The 4-year capital works program, a long-term financial plan, is to be updated to include the Mittagong Playhouse, to be funded for $2 million in the 24-25 financial year, with the remaining balance, 6.5, noted to be funded by grant funding. That way, and it's just not Mr. Street who's raising this with me, it's other people. It just looks like the council has robbed Peter to pay Paul at the expense of the Mittagong Playhouse, when we know there is capacity in the long-term financial plan, and I wasn't dealing with you in my discussions, I was dealing with the Executive Manager Business Transformation about the capacity. And look, the reality is the council may have to find more, but I understand the suspicion in taking the $2 million out. It may be at the end of the day we have to spend some money to put a roof on, but I think until we just explore a bit further, and there is some federal and state monies coming up, and now that we're actually laying out what our plans are, I think it's important that $2 million go back in. I am concerned in relation to a lot of councils that not enough financial information in a readable format is given to councillors. And I've been speaking to other general managers who I used to work with, they've all retired too now. But what I would like is for the General Manager to report on the feasibility of providing monthly financial reports that disclose year-to-date financial results in operating statement format by fund. It's not a big ask, but I think it's going to take a time to develop it, and that would be funding advised month to month. So it would make the officers also be more accountable for their spending habits month to month. And that could, and what has happened in several councils, and I think there's more going to be announced soon, of councils using restricted funds, which is not on, and this will highlight that fact. So it will assist the incoming council also, who, you know, some councils will think because we've got this, our working capital of $6 million, you can spend it. You can't. It's not restricted, but it's important to the future financial viability of the council. So that's where I'm coming from with that. All these things are for the incoming council, really, so they can have confidence. And, you know, when we're starting to talk to people who are proposing to stand for council, they can have a far better understanding of what we're talking about. My second final one, my final one originally, was in relation to people have contacted me about the new policy in relation to Moss Vale Showground, Bong Bong Racecourse, and like there's several other ones, but they're the main ones people have been talking to me about. I agree with the policy, and I really do think that the community already gives them subsidies by virtue of their zonings, but I'm not totally confident on that, whether they're zoned private open space or what. And if you've zoned private open space, you get a big reduction already in your land value. So I'd like a report. I'm not suggesting you don't send the rates out, send them out. But I'd like a report on that. And I'd also like a report on access by the council, because we are subsidising with public money, on their audited financial statements as well. You will recall there was the Scout Hall in Bowral, which this council, using public money, didn't charge rates to and had a commercial use there for 3 years. These are all legacy issues that are being uncovered. It's very easy to give away public money, but there needs to be accountabilities. And the final one is that last one from Ms Slattery. The General Manager provide a further report on funding for recreational walking tracks, including past decisions reallocating funds. Okay, well look, I've got to read this. Do I, or I suppose I've got to, because it's going to be long, but there's a process that has to be followed. Before I do that though, if I could also acknowledge the many people who have made submissions and very valued submissions into the process. I think this is the most Windsor Caribbees had for a long time, perhaps since the big rate increases. But I think, you know, it's genuine consultation. We do listen. And I think the presentation of the documents by the staff was fantastic. I'm very happy. It's evolving. There's more confidence coming into the community also that the council doesn't talk about it, it delivers. And I think, you know, I often get spoken to by people who, particularly in relation to roads, are seeing a big difference in what's going on. Fix it, do it once, do it properly, I think is the director's instruction. But also the amount of drainage work that's going on. People are noticing that too on the campus of the road. And as you explained to me, that, you know, decades they haven't been touched, and of course the water table will rise and ruin the roads, and that's why this is happening. But like all regional areas, the roads here aren't good because it was just tar laid on what was there, the dirt roads that were there, and that's no one's fault. That's just a legacy of history. Okay, so I would move that 1, Council considers the public submissions received during the public exhibition period and endorses the responses to each submission, accepting the response in submission 11, and that no action be taken to install temporary SULO bins in Bowral, and arrangements be made on weekend and public holidays to have extra emptying of existing inefficient bins, and that all responses to submissions made be under the non-delegated signature of the General Manager. 2, Council adopt the Resourcing Strategy 23-33, Delivery Plan 23-25, Operational Plan 23-24, including Budget Revenue Policy, Fees and Charges. 3, Council makes and levies the rates and charges for 23-24 financial year as detailed in the revenue policy contained within the 23-24 operational plan in accordance with the Local Government Act 1993. Pardon me. Council makes and levies the domestic waste management charges for 23-24 financial year as detailed in the revenue policy contained within the 23-24 operational plan in accordance with the Local Government Act 1993. 5. Council makes and levies the stormwater management service charges for 23-24 financial year as detailed in the revenue policy contained within the 23-24 operational plan in accordance with the Local Government Act 1993. Council makes and levies the water and sewerage access and user charges for 23-24 financial year as detailed in the revenue policy, contained within the 23-24 operational plan in accordance with the Local Government Act 1993. Council authorised loan borrowings of $4 million in the 23-24 financial year to fund the Civic Centre back office refurbishment. 8. Council set the rate permitted by the Minister for Local Government and the allowable interest rate on overdue rates of 9% per annum for the 23-24 financial year. 9. The General Manager update Council on the strategic planning works program that will inform the review of the Wingecarribee LEP and development control plans, including timelines and linkages with the CSP. 10. Council notes that the comparisons in the charges and fees are relative to Wallandelli, Shellharbour and Eurobodalla, and that market fees are contestable, allowing residents to make use of third-party providers if they so desire. 11. Consideration be given and reported to Council on the installation of GPS technology in all Council vehicles. 12. The General Manager report to all meetings of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee on active legal action involving Council, and the details to be supplied to meetings be developed in consultation with the Chair of the Committee. 13. The $270,000 efficiency dividend be incorporated in the adopted 23-24 budget and allocated to the proposed Emergency Operations Centre to be constructed with the construction of the cold shell to be finalised during the 23-24 financial year. The 4-year capital works program and long-term financial plan be updated to incorporate the Mittagong Playhouse in the 24-25 financial year, funded by loans $2 million, with the remaining balance by grant $6.5 million, with funding to be reviewed upon the development of the next long-term financial plan. 5. The General Manager report on the feasibility of providing monthly financial reports that disclose year-to-date financial results in operating statement format by fund. 16. The General Manager provide a further report on its rates, water and sewerage access subsidy scheme guidelines and the financial impact on existing recipients. 17. The General Manager provide a further report on funding for recreational walking tracks, including past decisions reallocating funds. And I would declare that carried. Just before we move to the next item, we moved pretty quickly about the $4 million for the Civic Centre back of office refurbishment. People who have been following what has happened at the council and what happened in the public inquiry will be aware that while the former council said it was spending 13, I think it ended up, 10 million, the application to the Office of Local Government indicated that it was for occupational health and safety. Nothing was spent in the back of office staff areas. So it just has to be done. And we've given undertakings that it will be done. And that's why that money is allocated. But if anybody wants to talk to me about that and get the history of it, I'm more than happy to discuss it. It's complex, but it's got to be addressed. Just another legacy item, but it all costs money. Okay, 7.2, the Moss Vale Sewerage Treatment Plant Upgrade. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. The Manager Project Delivery, Mr. Tripukovic, will introduce the report.
Thank you. Mr May, the purpose of this report is to provide an update on the status of the Moss Vale Sewage Treatment Plant and to seek endorsement for the public exhibition of the draft review of environmental factors. Without reciting the report and its technical components, I will provide a high-level introduction only. The Moss Vale Sewer Treatment Plant is located off Kennedy Close in Moss Vale and was most recently upgraded in 1996 with a nominal design capacity of 9,000 estimated population, or EP. As a local water authority, Council is required to prepare a 30-year strategy for the provision of appropriate, affordable and sustainable urban water services. Council adopted the Integrated Water Cycle Management Strategy in 2018 and in parallel commenced concept plans for the upgrade of the Moss Vale Sewage Treatment Plant. Utilising the Integrated Water Cycle Management Strategy to inform the estimated population for the design out to the planning horizon of 2046, which estimated the predicted population of 36,000 people. This is a significant increase in demand from where the plant currently operates, and several issues impact a plant's efficiency if not working to the design demand. As such, a staged approach has been adopted to initially design the Moss Vale plant to an estimated population capacity of 20,000 people. Key factors in relation to design parameters include effluent discharge quality. As the Moss Vale plant discharges into the Wingecarribee River, stringent treatment processes and endorsement from the Environmental Protection Authority and Water New South Wales is required for these receiving waters. The design has followed a similar path to that of Bowral, as there are numerous advantages to keeping treatment processes, operations and equipment standardised. The fundamental design includes increasing the current capacity of the intermittently decanted extended aeration tanks and constructing a new tank. Scope also includes installation of new dual bed media filters, upgrading the UV disinfection and establishment of permanent mechanical dewatering systems. This design also includes the enabling works for the future proposed upgrade, which would service the predicted 36,000 EP at the 2046 horizon. Public Works Authority has completed the draft review of environmental factors in consultation with stakeholders and regulatory authorities. The review has been undertaken as per all relevant acts to consider all likely impacts to the environment resulting from this activity and having regard to all relevant factors. The draft has also considered heritage, biodiversity, noise and odour, and it has concluded that it is unlikely that there would be any adverse environmental impacts associated with the proposed works. This report resolves to publicly exhibit the draft review of environmental factors. Council has included the project in its 23-24 draft operational plan and long-term financial plans, which has also been complemented by a $25 million grant for the delivery of the Moss Vale Sewer Treatment Plant from the New South Wales Government, Department of Planning and Environment's Accelerated Infrastructure Fund Round 3. This acknowledges that the project will meet the demand of the anticipated population growth and, more importantly, unlock the potential of local development, particularly in relation to the Southern Highlands Innovation Park. As was undertaken for the Bowral Sewer Treatment Plant, Council will undertake a community information session on site at the treatment plant to further demonstrate the key benefits of the project and how the project will serve the community into the future with a resilient, robust and reliable service. Thank you.
Pardon me. Is the difference between Moss Vale and Bowral, you've got a lot more room at Moss Vale? It's going to make life easier?
Moss Vale is a fantastic site. It still will be a brownfield construction, but we can construct most of the plant on greenfield areas, whereas the Bowral site is quite constrained and constricted, so we're doing a lot of work in and around the operating plant.
Is any of the water that comes out at the end reused from Moss Vale?
The plan is to discharge into the Wingecarribee River ultimately, and it does need to meet quite stringent guidelines. They tell me you can drink the water that comes out. I'd prefer not to, personally, but it's a very high quality.
How much water would the sale yards use?
I would not be able to answer that question, Mr. May. I don't know.
Just one.
Mr. May, the Surrey Yards uses very, very little town water. I don't actually have the figures with me at the moment due to the large roof that sits over the actual yards itself. It captures water and then we run that through filtration systems, which is then recirculated through for animal watering on site.
Has anyone looked at using some of this water on the ship, at the ship?
I don't know if that's been looked into, Mr. May. We did undertake some research into the fact where other councils use the discharge water for irrigation purposes, but there's a massive network and infrastructure that needs to accompany that to work.
Look, I understand that, and the way the water table is now, is the last thing people would want. But I just wonder whether it's worthwhile having a look at the possibility of reusing some of what is a valued commodity in water, and that may be an opportunity. I have no idea, but I'm pleased to see that you're saying that there'll be an open day. So in relation to item 7.2, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 25 of the business paper 1 and 2, and declare that carried. Station Street. Look, can I just adjourn for 2 seconds? Apologies for that. Reconvene the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. May. Mr. Tripkovic will introduce the next report, Station Street finalisation.
Thank you, Ms Foster. Mr May, the purpose of this report is to present to Council and the community the final outcome of the combined Station Street projects. The paper outlines the history of the project with reference to several other reports. In essence, the originally proposed Station Street upgrade was cancelled and resolved to be formally removed from Council's delivery program. Acknowledging that long overdue works were required for Station Street, designs were expedited both in-house and via consultants to provide a timely outcome to the improvements and shortcomings on Station Street. The proposed works included a number of items, including the piping of the overland drainage on the southern end of Station Street and construction of a new car park over the now piped drainage system, additional lighting, footpaths and pedestrian crossing blisters. Works to the northern end of Station Street include the replacement of the water main and removal of the decommissioned asbestos main, complete reconstruction of the road pavement, refurbishment and installation of trachyte in concrete curb and gutter, footpath improvements, pram ramps and driveway crossings. Works on the camellia plantings and heritage stone wall in front of the Bowral train station were also carefully planned and conducted, as well as vegetation maintenance on the street trees along Station Street, inclusive of the cherished pin oaks. And in partnership with Transport for New South Wales Sydney Trains, the complete reconstruction of the commuter car park was, as Mr May said himself, the icing on the cake for the refreshed and revitalised Station Street. Whilst numerous delays on all elements were encountered, including inclement weather, latent site conditions and significant unknown hazardous material finds, Council staff and their contractor regularly engaged with the businesses and the community and implemented strategies to assist and aid road users and businesses and sought innovative approaches to expedite the project. The report also demonstrates the responsible approach taken by Council in terms of the financial management of the project. Although there were significant increases in costs resulting from unexpected fines and unidentified in-ground latent conditions, all cost adjustments were reported to Council openly and transparently. The final financial position demonstrates the diligence that was undertaken throughout the project, completing the project well within the resolved and allocated budgets and at a fraction of the cost of the original Station Street proposal. It is acknowledged that there were frustrations from extra congestion and parking restrictions during the works, although I suggest that it was definitely worth worth considering. We now have a main arterial road that is smooth and pothole free, with significantly more car parking, a vastly improved pedestrian network, a rejuvenated camellia garden, and we still have all the pin-oaks. Thank you.
I think the whole council team can be very proud of the Station Street result, particularly where it started from, and I think those members of the community who made sure there was no civic vandalism of those trees need to be congratulated as well. From left field though, the car park across the road from Aldi, or Dirty Jane's I suppose is probably closer, in Barrel, that's all day parking. Has there been any discussion about getting that down to 2 or 3 hours, do you know?
I wouldn't be able to comment there, Mr. May. It might be a part of some of the work that Mr. Park is doing in relation to the Bowral CBD Master Plan.
We'll take that on notice, Mr. May, and report back.
It just seems to me, with all that car parking that I was told no one would ever use, at the southern end down there, it's all day parking. It would be to the benefit of retailers in Bowral if we got turnover in that car park. So, you know, it's just obviously there has to be a consultation process, and you know, I don't think it would have to wait for what the strategic planning people are doing. Just to find out what the community thinks.
Yeah, we'll undertake some consultation with the community. Thank you, Mr. May.
Okay, in relation to 7.3, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 34 of the business paper 1 and 2 and declare that carried. 7.4, the IPART rate report.
Thank you, Mr. May. The Acting Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Conrad, will present the report.
Thank you, Ms. Foster. The Independent Pricing Regulatory Tribunal has been setting the rate peg for councils since 2010. In August 2022, IPART embarked on a review of its rate peg methodology after including a population growth factor in determining the rate peg. After consultation with councils and other key stakeholders, including representatives of ratepayers, IPART have drafted a report and is seeking responses on several matters and the following draft recommendations. That a local government reference group be established to advise on implementation of the new rate peg methodology, and that the New South Wales government consider commissioning an independent review of the financial model for councils in New South Wales, including broader issues raised in the report. As outlined in the submission, Council supports the majority of the draft recommendations and decisions tabled within the report. However, it is noted that the timeframes outlined by IPART for providing a final rate peg being May each year are not practical due to the requirements for Council to publicly exhibit the operational plan and budget and revenue policy to the community during April and May each year in order to adopt these by 30th of June each year. An independent review into broader issues raised throughout the engagement process may be able to address some of the issues that have significant impact on Council's ability to operate in a strategic manner and ensure financial sustainability within the integrated plan and reporting framework. Submissions are due to IPART by 4th of July 2023, and a final report is proposed to be made available by IPART end of August this year. Council would like to thank IPART for the opportunity to comment on the draft report published in early June 2023, as well as participate in the workshops leading up to the draft report. Council acknowledges the time and effort that has gone into developing this report. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. And thanks for the work you've done on this. In relation to item 7.4, I would move that Council endorse the responses to the draft report on the IPART review of the rate peg methodology and declare that carried. 7.5, Mossvale Pool Contract Variation, General Manager.
Mr. May, the Coordinator, Open Spaces and Building, Michelle Bullock, will introduce the report.
Thank you. The purpose of the report is to seek council approval for the variation extension of the current contract with Bluefit Proprietary Limited for the management and operation of the Moss Vale War Memorial Aquatic Centre for the period July 2023 to June 2025. This report outlines the proposed contract variation for the ongoing management of the Moss Vale Aquatic Centre by the contractor, Bluefit. The tender management and operation of the Moss Vale Aquatic Centre commenced on July 1st, 2018 for a 5-year period and concludes on June 30, 2023. The term of contract states that all 3 options for contract extension are at Council's absolute discretion. Bluefit is currently operating Moss Vale's Aquatic Centre on a loss recovery basis for fin year 23, with Council being invoiced each month in arrears for the operational loss incurred. This variation of contract will address the extreme volatility and disruption of COVID-19 and the impact on memberships and casual attendance revenue, while still incurring operational cost. Under this approach, Bluefit will operate at cost, with a management fee built into the centre's operating expenses to reduce the subsidy required from Council. It is proposed that the options for contract extension are altered from a 3+2+1 sequence to a 2+3+1 sequence. The recommendation is to operate for the next 2 years on a fee-for-service model, whereby the operating result of the centre is funded by Council and Bluefit charges a fixed management fee. This protects Council from the risk of operator underperformance, leading to large financial losses payable by Council. Bluefit would be required to continue to operate to allow both parties to get clear insight into the centre's operational and financial performance over the 2-year period. The recent health club extension and growth of the Learn to Swim program are likely to have a positive impact on the project trajectory of the centre. However, inflationary costs from suppliers and staff salary increases are likely to have a negative impact. Over the next 2 years, these impacts should be clearer, allowing for stabilisation in operating and health club extension benefits to be quantified. Bluefit still needs to meet all key performance indicators as agreed under the original conditions of contract. Council have retained the key performance indicators and reviewed the measurement of those KPIs in line with updating to the fee-for-service model. The report recommends the ongoing management and operation of the Moss Vale War Memorial Aquatic Centre to continue with Bluefit under the current contract with the variation. This report recommends the approval of variations, including move to a fee-for-service model and the update of the original contract documentation to note the fee-for-service model as a condition of the contract. Thank you.
Firstly, I don't think we've met, so welcome to...
Thank you.
How long have you been here?
3 months.
3 months, Are you confident that what you're predicting in the financial years will be achieved?
We hope so. We were seeing year-on-year progression in terms of the numbers that are going up, so we think that it's achievable at this stage.
In the forward financial plan, have you factored the current arrangements in or the new arrangements?
It'll be based on the existing arrangements.
Pardon?
The existing arrangements, not the new contract negotiated.
Gee, if Mr. Street was here, that's another opportunity to start and fund some loans. I'm determined about Middlegorm Playhouse. Okay, thanks very much for that.
Thank you.
I'm going to add a number 3. In dealing with this stuff in open council, you did put a covenant on the report, the financial report. It just does need another recommendation from the council to protect the council and the operator in the release of that document. That's not a criticism, it's just, that's the way we do things. We're trying to keep as much as we can open. I think many councils will just dealt with that in closed council, but there's nothing to hide. Okay, so in relation to item 7.5, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 241 of the business paper. 1, 2, and add new 3. Confidential attachment 1 to the Moss Vale pool variation contract be withheld from access to the media and public as required by section 11.2 of the Local Government Act 1993 for the following reasons. In accordance with section 10A2 of the Local Government Act 1993, under clause 10A2C, information that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on a person with whom the council is conducting or proposes to conduct business, and declare that carried. Item 7.6, Council Policy Review Update.
Mr May, Ms Lidgard, the Manager of Governance and Corporate Performance, will introduce the report.
Thank you, Acting General Manager. This report provides Council with an update on Council's policy review program. So since administration that commenced in March 2021, Council has focused on reviewing and developing new policies to strengthen its governance framework. Table 1 in the report outlines the 26 policies that have been reviewed or developed during this period. Over the next 12 months, Council staff have committed to reviewing an additional 34 policies, and these are outlined in Table 2 of the report. In addition, as part of Council's continuous improvement program, Council officers are implementing a delegation and policy software platform. It's anticipated this program will be implemented by the end of September, and the software will assist in enhancing management, accountability and compliance for delegations and policies.
Is it a legal requirement every 5 years, or is that this council's policy?
That is the current council approach, but some of our policies need to be reviewed based on statutory requirements. Others changes to the environment. So we've set a 5-year, except for where there's statutory requirements or new information comes to light that requires it to be updated.
Some of them haven't been done for 15.
That's correct.
Okay, in relation to item 7.6, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 343 of the business paper and declare that carried. 7.7.
Mr May, the Director of Communities and Place, Mr Davis, will introduce the report.
Thank you, Acting General Manager. Mr May, earlier this year when Council approached the New South Wales Department of Communities and Justice to have a representative on Council's Community Reference Panel, the Department raised the fact that Council had 2 years, or over 2 years ago, declined the opportunity to be a part of their Child and Family Leadership Group. Council resolved at the April meeting earlier this year that a report be presented to Council in relation to the Department of Communities and Justice Child and Family Leadership Group and Subgroup, and the exchange of correspondence between the Department and Council about the group and the subgroup. Since that time, Council officers have found no record of conversations with officers, and officers have also contacted the department to inquire about their records of previous invitations or conversations, but were told that such would have been sent from the district directors' mailboxes to which they did not have access. Importantly, Council has now been invited by the Department of Communities and Justice to attend the Child and Family Leadership Group meetings, in particular the subgroup meetings for local government. And this report recommends that Council note that the Manager of Community and Life and Libraries will represent Council on the Department of Communities and Justice Child and Family Leadership Group from August 2020, or from August onwards.
What do I say? I just have to move the recommendation. I'm surprised that the General Manager hasn't really followed this up further. But I'm happy with the recommendation. In relation to item 7.7, the Department of Community and Justice, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 348 of the business paper and declare that carried. Acting General Manager, any further business?
No further business, Mr May.
I declare the meeting closed. Thank you for your attendance.